Scientific writing is key to research. It's by writing that you communicate your core ideas, your new insights to fellow researchers so that they can build on it. So let's look at some advice on writing. Specifically, this is advice suggested by Anse Gismund Huff in 1999. Ms. Huff suggests that writing is conversation, and you're unlikely to publish if you're only talking to yourself. You need to converse with others. So you should listen before you speak. You should connect with the points already made by others. You should be interesting. You should be polite. Think about it like joining a cocktail party or a dinner party, and you walk to a table where other people are already engaged in a conversation. What do you do to engage with them in a conversation? Well, you listen before you speak. You don't walk up to the table and start speaking right away. You first listen in what the others are talking about, and it's just polite to listen in what they're talking about. And then you should connect with the points they are making. You shouldn't fully redirect the discussion in a different direction, but you should relate to the topics they are discussing. But you shouldn't only listen in, you shouldn't only acknowledge what they are saying and ask questions about it. You should be interesting, you should contribute to the discussion, you should bring new insights and perspectives to the table. And that's how you engage in a good discussion with others, at a cocktail party, at a dinner party, and as well in academic writing. So writing is conversation. That's important to keep in mind. Further, writing is a form of thinking that is intrinsic to scholarship. You shouldn't wait until the end. Typically, it's a mistake to plan a research project in a way that first you conduct all the research, gain all the insights, gain all the new knowledge, and then start writing at the end. Oftentimes, while writing, you notice that you have flaws in your thinking, that you need to improve your thinking, that you need to change your results. So writing and thinking are intertwined and shouldn't be in a sequence. You should use exemplars, 2 or 3 exemplars, 2 or 3 other published articles, at best well-written articles published in highly reputable journals, which you can use as exemplars how to structure and present your ideas. You shouldn't reinvent the wheel how to present the ideas. The conversations by others follow conventions, and you need to know these conventions to engage with them in a conversation. And you see these conventions by analyzing exemplars, exemplary articles published by others. You should look out for the format and the language that has been defined by centuries of tradition, by editorial practices, and by professional ethics in different fields. And these exemplars showcase the conventions. You need to analyze them, you need to understand them for not reinventing the wheel. And you should analyze the structure and tone of these other papers, these exemplars you're looking at. And you should draw conclusions about the tacit rules of the conversation. And these tacit rules of the conversation, they differ between different disciplines and subdisciplines and over time. So you should look at timely exemplars, at best in the journal which you aim to publish in, or at least in the smaller community which you aim to publish in. Next, Ms. Huff suggests that you should obtain advice from others. And I think this is very good advice she has here. But you should make only modest demands. If you send a colleague a full paper, something like 30, 40, 50 pages, including all appendices and so on, well then that's a high demand you are asking there to read that and to comment on it. If you only send an outline, an expose, the introduction, 2-3 pages or the like, and ask for feedback on that, you're way more likely to get quality feedback on that. And you should ask early, as it is easier to integrate. So when you ask for feedback, once your document is fully done, well then it's rather difficult to integrate the feedback if it's substantial. If you ask early on, you can early on prepare for not making mistakes and early on take the feedback into account. You should prepare an outline and use topic sentences. This outline helps you in structuring your ideas, structuring the document, seeing which level of detail you need to achieve in the different sections, and potentially it's a good starting point for obtaining feedback on your ideas. Topic sentences essentially tell reader what the rest of the paragraph is about. So you see this with some writers, that the first sentence of the paragraph basically tells you the rest of the paragraph. You don't really need to read on. It's sufficient to only read the first sentence of the paragraph and move on to the next first sentence of the next paragraph. Now, if the sentence is really interesting for you, if you want to understand how one comes to that conclusion, which different perspectives there are and so on, then you might dive deeper into the paragraph. But basically the first sentence tells you everything. And it helps you in writing if you do that. You start writing only these topic sentences, and then these should give the entire story. It should be an easy read only looking at these topic sentences. And once you have these, you know that your story is fine, and then you can start detailing the arguments in the paragraphs following these topic sentences. In this writing, you should use a straightforward style. Some think that academic writing is very complicated, has a strange language, a strange way of placing the phrases and the arguments. Well, that's a bug, not a feature. The style should be straightforward. It should be easy to read. You should use no more words than necessary. Complicated writing might sound serious, scholarly and authoritative. However, your objective is to communicate effectively and to be understood. So you should adopt a style that is simple and direct. You should use active voice, simple words, no unnecessary redundancy. Some redundancy is necessary. The abstract is in a sense redundant with the rest of the paper as it summarizes the entire paper. Likewise, the introduction is redundant with the rest of the paper as it summarizes the entire paper. So there's some planned redundancy, but you should avoid unnecessary redundancy to have a straightforward style. You should use your management skills. There are differences when, where you write, what materials you need, and so on. You should organize around that. You should manage your writing so that you bring yourself in a position to write well. And you should actively choose to write. You should reserve time for it. Writing takes time. And it doesn't work if you only have 10-minute slices of time or the like. You need longer time periods for writing. And you should put other work and leisure activities aside for that time. Postpone it until you're done with writing so that you can really focus on writing and bring your ideas to paper. As always suggested by this advice, there's a reciprocal relationship of writing and thinking. You start thinking in your research, you have a research question, you have your methodology, you conduct your research, you think about what is a new insight. You start writing, you present it, this sharpens your thinking, you bring it to paper again, you present it and the like. So it's a reciprocal relationship, a cycle of thinking, writing, and presentation, not a strict sequence, but an iteration. Karl Weick famously said, "How can I improve what I say until I clarify what I think?" So he pronounces the interplay of writing and thinking. And then you can also ask, how can I know what I think until I see what I write? It's often that in your mind, everything seems clear and you think the problem is solved. But once you start putting it on paper, putting it in words and diagrams and tables, you see that your logic is flawed and that you need to rethink it. That's how writing and thinking are interplay. And another question is then, how can I know my writing will connect with its audience until I see their response to what I say? So really not having only an imaginary audience which should read your writing, but having a real audience in a presentation, seeing their faces, getting their reactions, helps you understand how well you motivate your research problem, how well you communicate your findings, what about your findings is really interesting to them. This leads us to some requirements for scientific writing, some characteristics, some basic principles. The characteristics are that writing, be it a thesis, be it a paper, should be about a clearly delineated topic that is also recognizable to third parties. Meaning not only in your head it should be a clearly delineated topic, but others should see that it's one topic. And if you have different topics, different ideas, and then you should have different pieces of writing, different papers, different theses, or the like. You should make new statements within the topic. You want to contribute to the body of scientific knowledge. That means you have to provide new statements to expand the scientific knowledge, or at least increase the usefulness of knowledge which was already there beforehand. And you should have verifiability of all statements. Think about the scientific methods, and that's a basic characteristic that whatever you state there needs to be verifiable or clearly labeled as your individual opinion, but then it's not the typical research writing which you do at that point. The basic principles are also the verifiability of the methods. You need to describe the method so that others can replicate your research. Think again about the scientific method and the core of the scientific method. It should be objective as far as that's possible. And depending on which word you take, it's not fully possible to be fully objective, but at least that's the standard to aspire for. You should disclose your sources. You should cite others when you use their ideas. You shouldn't use plagiarism, but disclose your sources. Comprehensibility of the argumentation is important. I mean, you want to convey your knowledge. Others need to understand how you arrive at this knowledge, at these statements. So you need to clearly argue and have comprehensible argumentation. Accessibility of the results is important. That goes back to what I said before about the language and the straightforward style. Others should be able to understand what you try to communicate. You should make it accessible to them. You should be accurate, and reliability of your methodology and your results should be high. And you should use consistency. It's not good to use different words for the basic same concepts or constructs throughout the paper. You should have consistency. That makes it a little boring if you use the same words over and over again, but that helps you in the precision of communicating your results. And a fundamental requirement in this is honesty of the author or the authors, if it's multiple authors. At the end, we try to understand the argumentation, the methods. Sometimes research is replicated and the like, but we fundamentally rely on authors to honestly disclose what they did, what they found, what the new knowledge is. And this is a very high standard in academic writing.